My son lost his life. If I can live with that, you can certainly live with handling Sincere. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Resurrection, Part 10. When we left off, Natalia had done what she had to do to get herself and her mother off the St. James property in Miami. And while she could have been proud of the way she manipulated things, she absolutely was not. That was not the woman she wanted to be. She was the kind of woman who would go in Saint's shed, find his little black book of recipes, and ensure that Miss Miracle had what she needed in Saint's absence. She was not, and she did not want to be, the kind of woman who would use another woman's assault, information about that assault that she shared with her in confidence, to get her own way. And that was one of the reasons why she was heading back to Summer's. Before she even broached the subject of Summer and Saint's relationship, she was going to come clean. She was going to tell Summer exactly what she did and why. So when Miss Miracle let her in saying, "Hey girl, come on in the house," Natalia said, "How you doing today, Miss Miracle?" And Miss Miracle said, "Fair to middling, child. I can't complain." Then Natalia gave her another container of the aloe vera juice while saying, "Here's the recipe for this concoction that Saint had been providing you. Now, I'm assuming that you know how to dry herbs, because I certainly do not. I used most of what he already had and bagged up what was left. Then I pulled and plucked the plants and leaves that you'll need to grow and dry to make it yourself. My cousin, she's a doctor. She gave me some instructions for how you can replant them and grow them at home. And she gave Miss Miracle all the information she needed." When she was done, Miss Miracle said, "So I take it you're leaving, and I probably won't be seeing you or Saint for a while. Is he okay? Are you okay?" Natalia said, "As I understand, he's okay, and I'll be fine as soon as I get the hell out of Miami." Miss Miracle said, "Well, I won't pry, but if you want to talk about it, baby, I'm here." And before Natalia could respond, Summer entered the room. When Miss Miracle excused herself, Summer said, "So that one car that was parked down the street, I saw it leave and another car pull up. You know anything about that?" Natalia said, "Yeah." Then she told Summer what she'd done, that she'd arranged to get herself and her mother out of Miami and convinced Catherine to swap out Summer's security. She said, "Unfortunately, in order to make my case, and hopefully to help Saint, I told Catherine what Sincere did to you. I didn't tell her all the details, just enough to make it clear to her that he's a danger and to stress the importance of ensuring that he has no access to any information about my whereabouts or yours. I'm sorry that I didn't ask your permission first. You shared something that was highly personal with me in an effort to protect me. And I pray that it's okay that I used that information to do that." Summer said, "Girl, it's fine. I appreciate the fact that you would even tell me. My Nana always says that if you want to keep something a secret, keep it a secret. The minute you tell somebody else, you have no control over what they do with that information. Other than Saint, I never told another living soul. And I knew that he would never tell it. But he sent you here for me to tell you. That means that he trusts you. And if he trusts you, so do I." Then Natalia said, "Thank you, girl. I appreciate it. I have some questions, though, and I don't plan on sharing whatever you tell me with anyone else. I'm just trying to understand what you knew when, what Saint knew when, and how all of that came together to form this lifelong friendship that you two have." Summer said, "Like I told you yesterday, when I woke up in Sincere's bed, I had no idea what happened. When I walked out of his room, Saint was standing there. He looked severely disappointed. And I didn't even have time to figure out what was going on, because he was standing in front of the clock, and I needed to beat my curfew before I could even wrap my mind around it all. Sincere had me in his car, and he talked me into being his girlfriend. I didn't know what we'd done in his bedroom, but I could feel that something was different. I didn't know enough about anything to even consider calling the police, telling his mother, telling Nana, telling Saint. The next day, I stayed home from school, and after Saint got out of detention, he came to my house. He told me that I was the only one who could decide whether I wanted to be Sincere's girlfriend or not, and that if I didn't want to be his girlfriend, he'd have my back. I couldn't tell him what I suspected, because I didn't have any proof, and I didn't want him to have to choose between me and his brother. And he didn't tell me what he'd walked in on when he'd gotten home early from detention. So for weeks, I was that boy's girlfriend. And I waited until the opportunity presented itself. When I saw him flirting with another girl, to use that as an excuse to end things. And that seemed to suffice. He fell back, and Saint and I continued our friendship. Years later, when I was in a relationship with Blue, the father of my 3 children, Saint told me that he'd walked in while Sincere and I were in bed having sex. And I told him that I didn't remember a thing. And I was surprised that he wasn't surprised. When I asked him why Sincere would do that, he told me that it was because Sincere had figured out that he was in love with me. And anything Saint wanted, Sincere had to have. And Natalia was speechless. She told Summer, "I am so sorry that you endured that." Summer said, "I'm fine." While it took me years to confess it all, Saint had been put the pieces together. It was why he never pursued me. Not because he thought I was ruined after what his brother did, but because he didn't want his brother to come in and try to finish the job. We never even made an attempt to go back in time and try our hand at a relationship. I was in love with Blue, and he was happy for me. And now he's in love with you, and I am overjoyed for him. I value his friendship. And in order for us to continue being friends, I think it's important that you and I be friends. I also think it's important that you know everything there is to know about our friendship. Saint is loyal to the core. He isn't going to abandon our friendship for any woman. And I'm not the kind of woman who takes that lightly. I want my best friend to be happy, to find the kind of love that I found with Blue. Blue was my person. And without him, I'm lost. But I'm not trying to substitute Saint for him. I never want to be a thorn in his relationship with anybody else. That said, we do need to talk about what you shared and who you shared it with. Because the last thing I need is Sincere coming after me. Then Natalia told Summer about the 2 conversations she had. One with Javier and one with Catherine. When she called her father's phone, Javier answered. Javier told her that her father was otherwise engaged. And she made it clear to him that she was not staying at Catherine's estate. She gave him 24 hours to get her and her mother the hell out of Miami. And she told him, "I understand you can't tell me what's going on with Saint, but if I know enough about Interpol, then I already know that you're going to have the U.S. government go and get him. And then he's going to be held somewhere on U.S. soil. My point is you can relocate my mother and I close to wherever Saint is going to be held. He sent me a message. He wants me wherever he's going to be. I'm sure that Manny wants to know who Sincere really is. And I can guarantee that Catherine is not going to tell him. She's trying to save both of her stepsons. So if Manny wants to know what I know, he'll authorize getting us out of here. And he'll keep our location from anybody who might tell Sincere. And as soon as I have an opportunity to speak with Saint face to face, I'll gladly share what I know, if my man is okay with that. But whatever my father is doing, I'm sure when he is done, he is going to be none too pleased to learn that I've begged to get the hell out of Miami and nobody made it happen, especially if something happens to me. You're worried about international traffickers? You need to be worried about Sincere." And when she told her about her conversation with Catherine, Summer said, "Where's your mother? You told her that you were bringing her." And then Natalia told Summer, when I went to have that conversation with Catherine, he was engaged in a pretty heated discussion with a soldier, the same soldier that I'd seen melding minds with Sincere right before he left the estate. From the little bit of his conversation with Catherine that I overheard, it was clear that he was lying to her. So he'd agreed to do Sincere's dirty work. While I am not in the life and I don't like playing 5 family games, my father is, and I learned from the best. Let's just say, if that soldier does what I think he will, he's in for a rude awakening. When Natalia left Summers, she didn't go back to the St. James estate. Instead, she left with a Lopez caravan, heading directly to the St. James airstrip. The St. James driver and soldiers who had escorted her to Summer and Nana's house received orders directly from Catherine to return to the estate. While they were en route, Miss Eugenia was on her way to meet her daughter at the airstrip. She was also being transported by a Lopez team. When Natalia left Summer and Miss Miracle, Summer sat at her dining room table. And when Miss Miracle walked in, she could see that her granddaughter was heartbroken. She looked at her and said, "So, you've decided to do for him what he did for you several years ago, huh? Summer said, I don't know what you're talking about, Nana. Miss Miracle said, right. You love him. You always have. And not just as a friend. And certainly not like a brother. First, you got it in your head that you weren't good enough for him and that he didn't see you that way. Then you tried to settle for his brother as if you did not know that they were not two sides of the same coin. And then when you had the chance, you passed because you thought that his failure to fight for you and tell you how he felt about you when y'all were children was a sign of weakness. And there was Blue, screaming from the mountaintops where anyone could hear that he wanted you. He wanted to spend the rest of his life with you. So you hedged your bets. And now here you are, ready to move on, ready to give things a try. And you actually believe that you're doing the right thing. Summer said, Nana, you don't understand. It's a whole lot more complicated than that. I saw how Saint looked at her. I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he's in love with Natalia. And after these couple of meetings with her, it's clear that she loves him too. He deserves to start his own family. And he deserves to have a relationship that's not full of baggage and past traumas. Nana said, traumas? You got something you want to tell me? Summer said, it's old news. And I'm not the one who's still carrying it. Meanwhile, at the St. James estate, Catherine was pissed. She was completely outdone. Not only was she completely unaware that Miss Eugenia had stayed at the estate when Natalia left, but she had no earthly idea what Natalia had arranged with Manny herself or what she told them. There were only a matter of seconds between her receiving a call from Manny and her hearing an ungodly scream coming from the west wing of her estate. As she took the call, she headed to the west wing, and she was shocked and a little tickled to see the same soldier that she'd been questioning about his conversation with Sincere laid out in the hallway, writhing in pain, holding his hand and still screaming. He was laying in the hall outside of Natalia and Miss Eugenia's suite of rooms. And at Natalia's bedroom door was Miss Eugenia, wearing a pair of leather gloves and holding a taser in her hand. On the phone, Catherine told Manny, yeah, Natalia is a perfect fit for Saint. Then she told the lieutenant, who was trying to figure out what was going on, take him downstairs and don't let him out of your sight. She asked Miss Eugenia, are you all right? Miss Eugenia said, I'll be fine, and so will he. But you better get a handle on that Sincere, and you need to keep him far away from my daughter. I need to go. My ride is waiting outside. Then Manny, who was on the phone, hearing all of this, said, that's why I was calling you. I wanted you to know that I'd already handled all of the arrangements for Natalia and Eugenia. Let the men who are with Natalia know that they've been relieved. I have teams pulling up as we speak, one of which will get all of their belongings out of your estate. Do they need to be swept for bugs? And putting two and two together, Catherine said, it doesn't look like it. It looks like Eugenia handled that. Sincere had convinced the soldier that he'd help him get his rank in exchange for him spying on Natalia. All he needed to do was find out what Natalia's plans were, where she was going, what she was doing, and get a tracker in her things if it looked like she was going to be relocated from the St. James estate. And that's what he was trying to do when he snuck up to the West Wing, knocked on Miss Eugenia's door, and getting no answer, assumed that she'd left with Natalia and he just missed it. Then he went to Natalia's room and tried opening her door and literally got the shock of his life because Miss Eugenia had activated a taser and was holding it up to the metal doorknob. So as soon as he put his hands on that doorknob, he got 1.9 milliamps of electricity coursing through his body. Not once, but twice. Because the initial shock had him holding tight to that doorknob, and Miss Eugenia triggered the taser over and over again. When his brain finally caught up with what was happening to his body, he released the doorknob, let out that blood-curdling scream, and collapsed to the floor. As the soldiers carried him past Catherine, she said, I bet you wish you wouldn't have lied to me. You're going to wish that being tased was the worst consequences for that choice. Then Catherine stood in the hall and watched as the Lopez team came in and began carrying all of Natalia and Miss Eugenia's things out of the house. And with Manny still on the phone, she said, I do not get his obsession with Natalia. I don't understand why he would go through such lengths. Manny said, yes, you do. You knew his grandfather and his father. He got it honest. The best and the worst of the St. James legacy. Catherine said, give me a chance to. Manny said, absolutely not. Only one of Nigel's sons is operating with the five families' interests in mind, and that's the only son worth protecting. You cannot save Sincere from himself, but you can save everybody else from Sincere. My son lost his life. If I can live with that, you can certainly live with handling Sincere. Catherine said, I know you are not asking me to. Manny said, I'm telling you to do whatever you got to do to keep him from doing anything else, to put a stain on the St. James name, negatively impact the St. James organization, or threaten the sanctity of the five families. And if you can't do that, then you're not fit to lead. I have two nieces vying to be heads of their families' respective organizations. And the last thing they need is people questioning whether women have the emotional fortitude to handle the job. You are not the queen pin. You're supposed to be carrying the load so that Q doesn't have to. He's smack dab in the middle of a war engaged in multiple operations, including management of a situation where the father of the girl you're supposed to be protecting is in the hands of the traffickers. He's also managing getting Saint out of Paris, finishing the job that Sincere obviously screwed up, and he's investigating the disappearance of the chief of police's daughter in Denton. And all you're responsible for doing is keeping a rein on Sincere. Have you gone soft in your old age, or has becoming a stepmother? Catherine said, now hold on, wait a damn minute. I'm doing the absolute best that I can to juggle a situation that fell in my lap because Nigel was irresponsible. I'm cleaning up his damn mess. I love his kids, but I need this drama like I need a hole in my damn head. I will absolutely handle Sincere. But if the ultimate goal is to have Q step down and have a St. James at the helm, then often Sincere is going to make it real hard to do that. Manny said, it's clear that that man is not fit. Catherine said, obviously, but Saint is. His job as a finisher is done. But as long as I can keep Sincere from doing something that Saint will never forgive him for, we'll be able to use Sincere and all of his antics as a bargaining chip when Saint is free. Manny said, what are you thinking? Catherine said, I'm thinking that if I have enough time to work on Sincere, he'll come clean. He'll be forfeiting his seat at the table, but he'll save his own life. Saint won't have any choice but to pick up where his brother left off in order to save his brother's life. And in the end, he'll feel like the choice was his. Let's not forget that Nigel has 3 other children. I was disappointed when Natalia turned me down, when I tried to get her to help me prove Sincere's guilt or innocence. But knowing what he did to that girl and having time to think about it, I realized that she's right. No matter how wrong Sincere is, anybody other than Saint who chooses to take his life is going to immediately become public enemy number 1 with Simone, Chantal, and Star. It was hard enough to get those girls to get over the fact that their mother's death was connected to me. But the only reason why we were able to get Star to continue working for the 5 families was because Sincere was the one who pulled that trigger. Manny said, I thought you said Simone and Chantal don't know that. Catherine said, they don't. If they did, they'd never forgive Sincere. So Saint, Star, and I agreed to keep it from them. And that's the card I'm going to play to rein Sincere's behind end. When the St. James private plane landed in Maryland, Natalia and her mother deboarded out in a chauffeured car driven by a Lopez driver. They headed to a house owned by the Lopez family, where they met a team of security who were reporting directly to Stacks. They received new phones, and the lieutenant said, Miss Jiminez, you need to call Javier. When Natalia made the phone call, Javier said, there's been a change of plans. You need to stay there until Saint is back in the States and this situation with Sincere is worked through. Manny understands that you don't want to be a part of any plots to entrap Sincere. But unfortunately, you've just become bait. Natalia said, excuse you? Javier said, calm down. Hear me out. Your safety is our top priority for a variety of reasons. We would never intentionally put you in harm's way. Manny loves you. You are a part of this family. If he didn't, he'd make this decision and tell you nothing. but he wants me to tell you the entire plan, everything about everything, and keep you informed every step of the way. You don't have to do anything. Just keep your eyes and ears open. Report anything suspicious to the lieutenant who's been assigned to you. I'm sure that Saint will keep you updated on his situation via his legal representative. He's already been informed that you understood his message. Natalia had told Javier that she understood Saint's message to mean that she should ask Summer any questions that she had about their relationship, hence the comment about their shared birthday, i.e., they had in common that they loved the same man, just in different ways. That Summer should tell her what happened with Sincere so that she could protect herself. Hence the comment about making it up to her during their summer vacation. And that he wanted her to get out of Miami and move to where he'd be moved after his extradition back to the States. Hence his comment about seeing her soon. So Javier told Natalia, vacation is definitely code for this situation with Sincere. And I used it to send Saint the message that we're going to use Sincere's obsession with you to bring this whole situation to a head. Within the hour, I got a message back through his legal representative that we should get you and your mother out of Miami, keep you two together at an alternate location, and not move you to where he's going to be until he gets there. But I know you. You're not going to take my word for it. So I've given his legal representative your new phone number, and I'll keep you informed on this end about anything that I can. Then he told Natalia the plan. Natalia said, I need you to understand that the reason why I turned Catherine's proposal down is because I understand how Saint feels about his brother, about his family in general. And I would never want to be the reason he turns his back on his own brother, or the reason why his brother is implicated in a treasonous act that causes him his life. I'd rather end our relationship than to be the cause of enmity between them, or to be the reason why Saint has to kill his own brother and then have to explain that to his sisters. Not to mention that man has a baby on the way. No matter what he does to me, his family may never forgive Saint for doing something to him in my defense. Right is right, wrong is wrong, but family is forever. He loves his siblings the way I love mine. And if he was willing to sacrifice our relationship once, he might very well be willing to do it again. Then Javier told Natalia word for word what each of the messages were from and to Saint. Javier had told the lawyer, my niece is not at all disappointed that Art missed her birthday. She's looking forward to seeing him and hopes that it will be before the planned summer vacation. Otherwise, she'll be forced to travel without him because the plans can't be changed. If he can't make it, she'll take her mother instead. But if he thinks he'll be able to make it, just not on time, then let me know if he can meet her there. An hour or so later, Javier got a call back from Saint's legal representative. He said, I've spoken with Mr. Montclair. He believes the situation will be handled in time for the vacation, but he wants her to do whatever she needs to do to ensure that the investment isn't wasted and she has a good time. She should plan for him to be there, but as a backup plan, she should make sure that her mother's available. And if worse comes to worse, he will meet her there. But either way, he doesn't want her to worry about him. And again, he loves her and he'll see her soon. Then he said, now with all you know, what do you think he wants you to do? And realizing that there was absolutely nothing she could do to stop the 5 families from walking Sincere into a trap that he'd created for himself, Natalia said, fine, let me tell all of this to my mother. Wait a minute, my father is okay with this? And before Javier could respond, Natalia's mother said, Natty, you and I need to talk. Be damned if they disrespect you. They know your daddy don't play. Got a problem with figure it out together.